Hello and welcome to the third and the Dawn Football Show. I am Joe, and with me always is, well, not Cecil Walker. It is Ben Hendricks, our resident Packers fan at the Game House. You've probably heard us mention some of his wild takes on this show before. It still says Cecil Walker on the video that we're going to have up there because we didn't want to create a new graphic, but Cecil is on his honeymoon. Could not be reached. Apparently, there are things that are bigger than football, but Ben, how are you doing?
I'm well. If you don't know me, I'm the vice president of sports content here at the Game House. One of Cecil's good buddies and his go-to for actual deep movie information. He just sort of trades trivia with other people, and he can talk about film with me. So that's my resume.
Well, we'll see if Cecil's listening to this podcast when he gets back and mentions something about him being the film buddy. But let's get this thing started. We had a interesting week of NFL games to go over. The first one was on Thursday night. I was at Cecil's rehearsal dinner, so I was watching this from a bar in the first half and came back and watched the second half from home. It was the Titans at the Steelers. The Steelers get the win 20-16. Will Levis throws his first, pick. That wasn't the greatest thing for him. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, they get the win. They always seem to win these games, but they also have George Pickens blowing up on the sidelines because Deontay Johnson's getting the targets or something. I don't know. So Mike Tomlin has handled these personalities before with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and Ben Roethlisberger, but George Pickens is going nuts. But they get the win and go to 5-3, and because Mike Tomlin always gets to 500, these are the type of games you win for that.
You nailed it. The Steelers find a way to win games they should probably lose. That's sort of what they do, and they play up to better competition and down to worse competition. No interceptions for Kenny Pickett, only one touchdown, though. No touchdowns for Will Levis, only one interception. And what Joe didn't mention is not only did Kenny Pickett go crazy on the sidelines, he also unfollowed a lot of people within the Steelers organization on Twitter, and then took his Steelers stuff out of his bio and him in a Steelers uniform off of his avatar, his little Twitter avatar. That was Joe can speak to this a little bit more, but that was his main concern coming out of high school. Was he was already an NFL level diva wide receiver in college, and now we're seeing that already in a bad offense. I don't feel like anybody's going to, hang me out to dry for saying that. It is a very rudimentary bad offense. Jalen Warren's coming alive a little bit. To get to 500, just because that's sort of what they do.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, it looks like there's some technical difficulties or some delays of the internet or something. But yes, Ben and I both have people who are close in our lives that are Steelers fans. So we always kind of have a little bit of us rooting against them just for spite or whatever. George Pickens does have that diva mentality. That was the thing on his draft profile that we kind of talked about. Well, they kind of said that he's kind of crazy at Georgia. We'll see what happens in the NFL. And you thought maybe going to a program like the Steelers would get him worked out because they've worked out so many people before. But I guess the important thing is they get the win. They stay at 5-3, and for someone who's living in Cincinnati, it's not really they don't scare me that much, which is the good thing to have. Is like they're kind of this middle of the pack team, and that's fine. But with that offense the way it is, as you mentioned, they have Jalen Warren coming on, and that's great. But like Kenny Pickett's just maybe not the guy, and that's something they'll have to live with. So,
and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this, but. CJ Stroud as a rookie already has more touchdown passes than Kenny Pickett in his third year. But what's to be said about the Steelers other than I'm not sure we talked about their defense. It's still good, but extremely turnover reliant. They do give up yards, and they need those turnovers to look like a championship defense. And I know it's sort of I'm splitting hairs on that one, but you're not always going to get those turnovers with the better quarterbacks, especially in the playoffs and halfway through the season. I'm probably going to end up saying this a lot, is what we're looking forward to at this point. We know the teams that are bad, and we know the teams that are going to be fighting for the playoff spots. So on to the Titans, though. What do you think about your Kentucky guy, Will Levis?
I think he showed in this game that there are some highs and some lows. He made some really good throws, and he's definitely given them more than Ryan Tannehill. But as mentioned, he doesn't read the whole field all the time, and he makes some bad decisions, and that's where the pick comes in. Although, that they really, in the last drive, they were running the ball so much that they kind of had to throw it on 4th and long, and that really, I think, put him in a bad position, too. Seems like Mike Vrabel maybe isn't the biggest fan of him quite yet, which makes no sense to me because he looks like he's the best chance to win. But Mike Vrabel, Arthur Smith with Atlanta, maybe they just don't like using their best players. I don't know. So we have the Steelers 5-3 now, the Titans 3-5 with Will Levis, as you mentioned. Maybe something to watch down the stretch here. Both teams have a lot to play for, a lot to watch. Let's move on to the Sunday games, Ben. We have the first one in Frankfurt, Germany. We have the Chiefs beating the Dolphins 21-14. Not usually a defensive slugfest is what you would expect from these two teams, but it kind of was that way. The Chiefs get started early. They kind of, before halftime, they go up 21-0 on a weird Tyreek Hill fumble and then a lateral play where Brian Cook takes it the rest of the way. Dolphins come back in the second half and score 14 points, but I think this is twofold, and I guess you could go do this with every game, but the Dolphins still haven't proven they can beat a great team in the NFL. And that's something that people will be looking for before they make their playoff picks or can really believe in them as contenders. And the Chiefs, totally different team than last year. Their offense has had times where they struggle, but their defense has stepped up and they're able to run the ball, which is totally new for them.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense is looking top 3 in the entire NFL, which would scare more NFL teams if their offense was clicking. But it's not fair to talk about the defense being so good and immediately go to the offense. So what a lot of people are talking about is the player that they got in the Tyreek Hill trade through the draft, Trent McDuffie, is who forced the weird lateral fumble on Tyreek Hill, which is an interesting wrinkle. But of course, you had Tua missing Cedric Wilson on one of the last plays of the game. That's a bit overblown because it clearly was a miscommunication. I don't think he underthrew it that badly. But again, looking forward to the playoffs, this Chiefs offense still only scored 14 points on what I believe is the 25th ranked defense in the entire NFL. It is a problem. Patrick Mahomes is playing fine. He's always going to. He threw 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But if they have 2 turnovers in a playoff game, if they have 3 or more drops, which they seemingly always do, it is an issue. But that defense is, I hate it when people say this, his defense is balling out, though.
Yeah, I guess the important thing here, because they did score, 9 points against the Broncos last week, too. Important thing for them is they go into this bye, then they come out of it and play the Eagles. If they can play well against the Eagles, at least with that front 7, I know the secondary is always banged up for the Eagles. It seems like that can kind of get them on the right track. But I think it probably speaks to you would rather have their defense playing this well and figured things out, and have the offense be the one that has to come on down the stretch than anything else. Because I actually trust their offense to figure it out. If the defense was playing poorly, I don't know if I would trust them to figure it out enough to be at least this good. I mean, yes, they've won Super Bowls before, but I don't think they've ever had a defense this good. I don't think they've ever had a running game this good, which kind of speaks to maybe Andy Reid's job to change things, how things are going. And just one last thought on the Dolphins. Ben, there's a lot of people who think they're frauds because they haven't beat anyone good. I mean, it's only 9 games into the season, and I would say they've only had about 2 or 3 chances so far. Obviously, the Chiefs and the Bills were 2 of them, but I guess now we can't even say the Bills are a great team because they're right around 500. So, what do you think? Frauds or not?
Frauds is an extremely strong word. What I use for the litmus test of fraud in the recent NFL is last year's Minnesota Vikings, who was it last year or was it 2 years ago? Won 13 games. 11 of those were by 1 score. No one thought they were good, even though they had this gaudy record. I'm going to go the opposite. I don't think they're frauds. I think that's too strong. But they are going to need a home playoff game to win a playoff game, in my humble opinion. I don't think they have a bruiser at running back that can take the ball when it gets cold. And, speed tightens up when it gets cold. And, playing in the AFC East down the stretch, these games are going to get a little bit more dicey as they stop playing at home. So Frauds, no. I believe they will make the playoffs. I think they could. I think they still will win this division. So, however you want to take that, Super Bowl contender, on the other side of that, but not fraudulent. No.
Yeah, they do have a couple more opportunities to get these big wins. You could beat the Cowboys at the end of the season. Their last three games, Cowboys, Ravens. People are talking about the Ravens being the best team in the league right now, and the Bills, if they figure it out, obviously that could mean something for the division and for playoff seeding in the last week of the season. But if the Bills figure it out and get things back on track, they could have three chances at the end of the season after a pretty. I mean, the rest of the way is lackluster until that point. So. They definitely have their chances to do it. I'm with you. I don't think they're necessarily frauds. I do want to see them win a game before I could pick them to win a playoff game against. They've lost to the Eagles, they lost to the Bills and the Chiefs. One of the teams that we thought were the premier teams in the league before the season.
Totally fair.
All right, so you mentioned the Minnesota Vikings and the fact that they were frauds last year. This year, they are battling it out. They started off slow, and then they came back in the season and went to 500, and then Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. And then they go get Josh Dobbs the week of a game, and he's thrust into action after Jaron Hall, the rookie out of BYU, gets hurt, and he leads them to a win, 31-28 over the Falcons. A performance I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like. And it's Josh Dobbs played pretty well. It wasn't the best game overall, but when you take into account all the things we heard about the game, where before the game he had to go through his cadence with his offensive linemen. He had no live throws to any of the receivers on the roster before this. He had players in the huddle telling him what the plays were so he could figure it out. And now he's an aerospace engineering guy. They're calling him the Pastronaut now because he's a NASA guy. And I think he's earned every bit of that nickname. And for me personally, Ben, I know we've talked about this a little bit. Me more so for gambling and fantasy, maybe. I'm happy the Vikings won this. I know you're a Packers guy, so you won't be. But I'm happy the Vikings won this and just showed Arthur Smith that, hey, if you use your good players, you can win a game. Because that guy just frustrates me.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is unprecedented. I know if you're a sports talk guy and you listen to it, this has been talked to death. But still, it's unprecedented. He didn't know everybody's name. I did see a really interesting story about how Mark Sanchez was in a Kevin O'Connell system, and this sort of same thing happened to him. He had been there a little bit longer, I believe, but Kevin O'Connell, being a Sean McVay guy, knew how to simplify the offense down to where you can, if you know football well enough, read it through the headset and go. But the other thing I don't think people are talking about is, of course, KJ Osborne went down in this game. He didn't have Justin Jefferson. He didn't have his left tackle, who I think is one of the best left tackles in the league. Joe might fight me on that. But it's incredible. It's a cool story. The only problem is I just think Vikings fans knew where they were going at the beginning of the season. Like, we might be in the running for one of those better quarterbacks in this draft, and then all of the sudden they're above 500. And I think when Justin Jefferson comes back, if Josh Dobbs actually learns the offense, I mean, they could give the Lions a run for their money. So I mean, that's a roller coaster for you all. At least I know my team is bad, but you're right. The Falcons are refusing to use their good players. It's mind-boggling. I don't have any Falcons in fantasy. I'm sure some people out there do, including Joe, in at least one or two leagues. But it is really strange that he's not using his best players. It seems like he's outthinking the room on that. It's like, well, they expect me to use Bijan. Well, yeah, everyone does. Everyone at home does. Everyone on the other sideline does. Everyone on your sideline does. So the tight end 3 end arounds aren't like, I don't get it. I think his, regardless of their record, I think his refusal to use Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson could end up costing him his job. I don't love saying that, but I mean, tell me if I'm wrong.
You're not. I only have Bijan Robinson in pretty much any dynasty ever because I thought the one thing that I knew is they would just pound the ball. They'd run the ball, and he would get a lot of work. He's not using him. He's using Tyler Algier. He's using Cordarrelle Patterson. And you mentioned Kyle Pitts. Jonnu Smith is having the better season. He had 5 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown in this game. Mm-hmm. I don't quite understand it because this is a tight end in his rookie year had 1,000 yards, which for a rookie is extremely rare, and even for tight ends in general is rare because you don't, unless you're Mark Andrews, George Kittle, or Travis Kelce, that doesn't happen too often. So feel like they're wasting talent. They are 4-5, and they're in a division that seems pretty winnable, and they've added a lot on that defense. But it's going to be really hard to do that down the stretch when you have Taylor Heineke at quarterback, because maybe you didn't set up Desmond Ridder for the best success. Although I do like Taylor Heineke, I think he's a pretty good backup. And then you're just not using these guys. I mean, maybe the only thing you could say is maybe like Bijan at the end of the year will be fresh because doesn't have the wear and tear on his body that some of these other running backs will. So we'll see.
You could say that. Hopefully, they'll be in the mix by that point. And again, winnable division, so we could just be, you know what I mean. We could just be blowing smoke. But last thing I want to bring up about this one is rushing yards, 146 on the for the Vikings versus 110 on the Falcons, and that's with a team with a brand new quarterback who's running the ball, Alexander Madison, who I think we all can understand at this point is a running back too, and Cam Akers, who is out for the season. So just mind-boggling stuff from the Falcons offense, but they are 4-5. They're not out of it, especially in that division.
Absolutely, and just a reminder that Vikings continue to listen to Creed, and that is why they continue to win. That's the proven fact after the Rangers won the World Series, and now the Vikings are on a winning streak with the quarterback they literally picked up this week. So always listen to Creed. Next game up, Ben, we have the Browns winning 27-0 over the Cardinals. Just kind of quick notes on this one. I don't have too much because this is kind of what we expected. Clayton Tune, the rookie out of Houston, started this game for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray wasn't quite ready to come back, and Josh Dobbs have been traded, as they look like they're probably going to tank, even with Kyler Murray coming back. And just, the Browns' defense is still very, very good. They're 5-3 now, and that AFC North is very tough. And if they didn't have quite that good defense, I'm not sure they're anywhere close to 5-3.
Agreed. Cardinals, again, with a completely fresh quarterback, one third down conversion all of yesterday. You're right. There isn't a lot to say other than Amari Cooper is still great. I think you as a Cowboys fan could definitely respect that. And Deshaun Watson, they continue to get it done regardless of who's taking the snaps. That defense is pretty awesome. Myles Garrett on the way to a defensive player of the year season. You're right. We won't waste your time with this one. Cardinals are bad. Browns are they're different, but they could be scary.
Yeah, a team that you don't want to play, and it's not because their offense scares you. It's because that defense can make anything happen, and especially we saw it week 1 against the Bengals with that rain game. If it's bad weather, like it typically is, like in the late part of the regular season or even in the playoffs, if the Browns are fortunate enough to make it, that's something you don't want to play. Mm-hmm. Next one up, we got the Packers beating the Rams 20-3. I'm going to let you take most of this, but I will say, Rams had backup quarterback in. It did look like the Packers struggled initially, but then in the second half kind of took things over. Good to see Aaron Jones get back on the field. Free Aaron Jones, as always.
Yeah. So I put my Packers hat on for this one. I think I'm going to spend less time on this game than you're thinking I'm going to, because these teams are both going nowhere. But it is encouraging to see a touchdown in the first half. They had scored 3 points in the previous, I think, five or six games in the first half. We've been absolutely garbage in the first half of these games. Aaron Jones was inexplicably not getting the ball at all, not running it, and when he was getting the ball on these goofy little screen passes that are going nowhere because they know that's exactly what you're doing. Matt LaFleur has been exposed this year. But when you're playing a team with a backup quarterback and, 1.5 good receivers in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, I say half because Cooper Kupp's I think we can all tell he's still on the mend. I don't think he's 100%. It is a fine win. You want to beat bad teams, but also we lost to the team that gave up 70 points. I am encouraged to see Matt LaFleur realize that they're not scoring any points. He has kind of famously said, I don't know if you've seen this, that he's not scripting. He's not scripting plays in the first half, which seems like 4D chess kind of stuff. No, I'm going to take what the defense gives me in the first half. But if everyone else in the league always does it, then I don't understand why you're not doing it. 228 yards for Jordan Love, 1 touchdown. That's better. It's still not awesome. Aaron Jones is awesome. Um, Very strange fumble in that game where Aaron Jones picked up. Did you see this clip?
Mm-hmm.
He picked up Dontavian Wicks and just said like, "Hey, keep your head up. Like, they only have 3 points. It's fine." Um, last thing I'll say is, uh, please, Packers fans, do not let this trick you into thinking that Joe Barry is good at his job. Joe Barry is the worst defensive coordinator in the league, and because he's given up 17 here, 20 here, only 3 this week, he is not good. He is continually scheming things that make absolutely no sense, playing 10 yards off the line of scrimmage on a 3rd and 8 with, regularity. And people are dropping all of these things like, well, sometimes your defensive end has to drop into coverage because you play in a 3-4 scheme. Preston Smith should not be covering anybody. I'm tired of watching it. I know they've given up minimal points over the last 3 weeks. They've been playing bad offenses. Joe Barry is bad. He needs to be gone at the end of the year. I don't care if we give 3 points up for if we give 3 points up for the rest of the season, we're probably going to the playoffs. So never mind. What I always say to Joe is on our daily work phone calls are this is how this defense should be playing every single week. They have 8 first-round picks on the roster. We shouldn't be surprised by them giving up 20 or 17. 3 is a bit surprising, but this Rams offense is not good. We shouldn't be. This should be the norm. It should not be like, oh look, he did okay. So not a very exciting game, but Packers came out with one. I don't think we were going to be bad enough to go get Drake May anyway. So I'll just pass it off to you on that.
No, I think what you said rings true, and they've done well. I guess it's defensively in some regards, but as you mentioned, there's some things that just kind of like this should not happen. This is like a second grade football thing that like is happening. The tough part for them is it seems like the easy part of their schedule is kind of over. They do have some easier games near the back end, but this next 4 weeks, it seems like you got Steelers, Chargers, Lions, and Chiefs. You might not win a game in that stretch, and then you go down to, is Barry on the hot seat? Is LaFleur on the hot seat? There's reports coming out from guys like Kurt Benkert, who I know Packers fans love because of the one kneel down and everything, and that he was a good locker room guy. And he's been saying, like, once Aaron Rodgers left, or even when he wasn't there in some of the training camps, the last couple of years with all the contract issues, that he just kind of turns into a different guy. Like there wasn't, I think people may be understating Aaron Rodgers' presence for the Packers team in the sense that he would take a lot of the pressure off of some of the other guys when he was there and kind of be like a lighter player, as LaFleur would maybe yell at him or maybe yell at other people, and he would kind of diffuse the situation. So interesting to see what happens here. I don't know. Maybe that's the locker room is a little bit different now that you have LaFleur maybe thinking he's the alpha dog now that Rodgers is gone. I don't know.
Yeah. Another thing I'll say is A.J. Dillon sort of just tripping all over himself during these warmer months. People are saying, a lot of people are saying that he gets better as the weather gets colder. I don't know. We'll have to check on that. As far as Kurt Benkert goes, great follow. He does breakdowns. He does breakdowns for the layman. Joe is way more into the scheming and stuff, and I'm more of like, I know it when I see it. I know I'm a Packers fan, but like if Nathan Peterman still has a job because he's good in the because he's good in the film room, then so should Kurt Benkert. But he's getting paid. It's okay. That's all for nothing.
He could go USFL or XFL now that they're merging, whatever they're going to be called, and he could go start for them and then get back in the NFL. I do think he's a guy who fits like really well in the locker room too. He's always doing these breakdowns. He knows what he's talking about. He also plays a lot of Madden. It seems just like he's a totally easygoing guy. So if he has a problem with the way the locker room is, and yes, he was cut, so he's a little biased. I think there might be some issues there, and we'll just have to see how they figure it out. Whether it's they lose some games coming up here and they fire defensive coordinator, fire the whole staff. We'll see. I think it might be something that gets to that point because, like I said, I think these next 4 weeks could be pretty ugly.
And Uh, first of all, if you're sorry, if you're a Packers fan, um, looking forward to this regime getting totally torched. Um, Mark Murphy's contract expires in 2025, and I think that's the most likely clean house year. I think Joe Barry probably will be gone at the end of the season. And if you don't mind, could you read off those next four games for me?
I don't have them up anymore, but I believe it was Steelers, Chargers, and something in
Kansas
Chiefs.
City,
Lions and
yeah,
Chiefs. Yeah, Lions and Chiefs.
um, yeah. I think the Steelers and the Chargers are winnable. I think the Chiefs and the Lions would really, really have to look past us to lose those games. But we'll talk more about Steelers Packers just a bit later. So we can move on. Sorry,
Yeah, you're,
enough about the 3-5 Packers.
hey, we bring on the Packers guy for a reason. We want more insight on it, and might be a team that we're not talking about as much as we have the last couple of years and the next couple of years. So always good to get it out. We'll keep it moving though. We'll go to the Commanders and Patriots. I won't spend too much time with this game either because I think both these teams are bad. The Commanders win 20-17. This is a week after they traded away Montez Sweat, Chase Young. They have a new ownership group. They're clearly looking to do a rebuild, at least a soft rebuild. The good news for them is Sam Howell looks like he can be a viable NFL quarterback after they drafted him in the 5th round. Don't know how he fell to the 5th round in the 2022 NFL draft. They still got some weapon. The wide receivers are still good, but they have a whole lot of work to do in terms of the running game and fixing that defense after they traded some of their defensive linemen away. So 4-5 right now, but you're kind of in that middle ground where you don't get the high draft pick. And I mean, Cecil and I have talked about it on the podcast. Ben, we've talked about it. The Patriots are a complete mess anyway. They're not going anywhere. This is a team that the AFC coming into this week was all within 2 games of each other. Besides the Patriots, they were the only team bad enough who were not within 2 games of each other. So we've talked about their long-term implications, but they don't have it this year. Mac Jones is not the guy, and with injuries piling up, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. Just quick thoughts on both teams. The Patriots look slower than ever, which is crazy because they were already an incredibly slow team. You don't have to be a draft expert, a big, huge college football guy to understand that this offense is, sluggish. Ramondre Stevenson, seems like he should be better, but like that's being a running back in the Bill Belichick system. You just sort of sometimes Jonas Gray has 4 touchdowns. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, Mac Jones is just kind of awful. I know that's rude, but it is what it is. I think with the Commanders, the only thing I think is really fun to talk about is how you said it. Sam Howell's looking viable, and then Brian Robinson. I think Brian Robinson, the Commanders running back, I think is really benefiting from having a at least good quarterback. Right? If they can throw the ball, he looks really good. I know 63 yards on 18 carries for a touchdown doesn't sound awesome, but like this offensive line isn't great either. So imagine him on a better team with a quarterback with more experience and a better offensive line. I think he's honestly one of the better running backs in the league, top 15. I would give him that. And then the last thing about the Commanders is like how different is it going to look, right? Because they have an entirely new ownership group, trading off Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Clearly kind of sets this tone. It's like, all right, we have some ideas now. You know what I mean? Snyder's gone. It's our turn. And Ron Rivera, who's like an extremely lovable guy, an inspiring story, but like it seems like this version of the Commanders is going to pass him by. Just like not really responding to the old Riverboat Ron type stuff. But again, we don't have to spend too much more time on it. But just be looking forward to that in the offseason. Like, how does the Brain Trust see this going forward? Because Sam Howell looks all right.
Yeah, I think the rest of the season you kind of evaluate how he does. If he continues playing like this, you maybe roll with him next year, maybe bringing up another veteran backup. But I was surprised if they're going to, trade away some of these guys. We've had a lot of quarterback injuries. I was surprised they didn't trade away Jacoby Brissett, who proved last year with the Browns he can play solid football. He can win in different systems. There's probably about 40 quarterbacks in the league that teams could probably start and get wins, like Josh Dobbs we mentioned and everything. So that's a guy you can win games with. I'm surprised that with all the injuries, he wasn't traded too. Now that you have Sam Howell as a guy who's developing and who's going to start the rest of the way, because you do want to see what he has. That surprised me, but they won the game. That's important, and now they can continue getting the draft picks and making their team better this offseason.
Yeah, and just stay healthy. A lot of these young quarterbacks are getting too injured to really get those to get those yips out of the way. You know what I mean? Hey, we're not going anywhere this year, kid. Throw as many picks as you want. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just hopefully he stays healthy.
Definitely. Next one up, Ben, we have the Saints beating the Bears 24-17. The Bears started off this game pretty hot and just kind of showed that you can only do so well with someone named Tyson Bagent, who's a D2 quarterback out of Shepherd University. Great story. We liked it when he came on and did well. They need Justin Fields back. They need to actually use Justin Fields in the right way, something we've mentioned before. The Saints starting slow is nothing new. Their offense has kind of had this like weird year where they don't really play up to the level of the talent that they have, whether that's offensive line, Kamara. After his suspension, he got back. Michael Thomas is back. Chris Olave, Derek Carr. That's a solid offense on paper, but they need to step it up. But important thing is they got the win. They're 5-4 in that division, where they look like they probably are going to win it.
Yeah, 211 yards and 2 touchdowns for Derek Carr. Get the Taysom Hill special. He threw one as well. Whatever. Tyson Bagent, 220 for 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Look, this New Orleans team is completely different, home versus on the road. It is completely different, which makes sense. New Orleans is one of the loudest, craziest stadiums in the entire league. But you're right. Tyson Bagent was a fun story. His dad's an arm wrestling champion, whatever. But it's not the long-term solution. The Bears, I don't. Have you had a chance to talk about the Montez Sweat trade?
We talked about it last week, yes. But if you want to add more to it, we're all ears.
Well, they signed him to an extension, and it's just strange. Like, it's strange to me that the defensive culture of the Bears, which has been a franchise-long thing, right? I mean, this is one of the oldest franchises in the league, and it's sort of always been built through defense first. It baffles me how they're continuing to pour money on into it when it's not really any good and the offense is worse. But to each their own, I suppose. You're right. Justin Fields needs to be used in the right way. I know he wanted to stop running as much, or the brain trust wanted him to stop running as much, but that's kind of when he's the most dangerous. He's not a pure pocket passer, and he's not going to be. And as far as the Saints team, I mean, sure, you're right. They might win the South, but I mean, you're right. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, it seems insane. It seems like an insane offensive roster, but again, I'm not a huge fan of calling for people's jobs. Other than Joe Barry, he needs to go. But I mean, Dennis Allen is holding this team back. I don't see a world in which you could argue that. They need an offensive head coach, especially if they're going to pour this money into Derek Carr and Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. And Kamara, you need an offensive coach, or at least you need a more clever offensive coordinator, because the extent of the cleverness comes with putting Taysom Hill in at quarterback, and we all know he's going to run the ball unless it's a running situation. It's second and short, and then he's going to throw it. We can all see it coming a mile away. So what do you think about that? I mean, people aren't talking about Dennis Allen being the one that's really holding this team back.
No, he definitely is part of the problem. He's proven, I think, through his 2 stints with the Raiders and the Saints that probably not the guy. I know it's a tough situation with, always anyone who coaches the Raiders is a tough situation. And then the Saints, when you have legends walk out the door like Drew Brees, but you gotta get something going here. You're losing games. Buccaneers are a little bit better than you thought. You collapsed against the Packers. If you win those games, it's a totally different narrative. And both of those games, offense stalled. Like 17 points
Mm-hmm.
against the Packers. Yes, you've mentioned the Packers have good players, but the defensive coordinator's not the greatest. Buccaneers score 9 points with all this talent, and that was the game where Kamara came back from suspension too. So I'm with you. I think Dennis Allen is a guy they're going to look at in the mirror, and it sucks because if they make the playoffs, it's one of those things where it's like, well, maybe Dennis Allen stays for another year. Maybe Derek Carr stays for another year, even though he's just captain check down this year. I mean, it's just one of those things. So it's kind of a
Yeah,
catch-22 situation.
and if they don't take off in the playoffs and like make this magical run, they're going to start to be in huge. Like this is the last thing we'll say on this, but they're going to start to be in huge trouble. They are pushing so much cap down the road; it would blow your mind if you look up the spot track on all that. So they at least need to win the South and be like, well, we won it again at least.
That would be good for the stability of the team, and if not, maybe they actually do a real rebuild instead of doing what you're saying, which is push the contracts down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Next one up, we have the Ravens demolishing the Seahawks 37-3. Now, first quarter of this game, there were no points. It was really weird. We're thinking, all right, defensive struggles coming. And then, really, it wasn't Lamar throwing the ball too much. He only had 187 yards. It was the running game came back for the Ravens. You had Keaton Mitchell. You had Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, all pitching in there. It was a dominating performance. And Ben, as we mentioned earlier, Ravens being talked about as one of the best, or if the best team in the league right now. I would say yes. I mean, they've had, probably the most consistent season. And most of the time, you kind of think Ravens, for me at least the last couple of years, even with or without the injuries, I think, okay, they're going to play good against a good team one week, and then they're going to go play down to the level of the competition the next week. But this year, I mean, yeah, they lost to the Colts. They lost to the Steelers. We know the Steelers-Ravens games get weird. But they're on 4 straight wins. They look like they're going to be hosting the Browns and Bengals in the next 2 weeks. It looks like a team that can get something going here. The back of my mind still telling me, hey, maybe the Ravens lose one of these next 2 games because that's how it works. But it's good for them. 37-3 against a Seahawks team that's above 500.
Yeah, like you said, Keaton Mitchell, I mean, absolutely exploding. An undrafted guy, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Lamar Jackson running it 10 times for 60 yards. Lamar Jackson, only 9 touchdowns on the season when we expected him to be passing a little bit more. That's not because I don't have faith in Lamar Jackson. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, so I'm a fan. I'm just bringing it up because he's on both of my fantasy teams, and I'm over it. I'm over 11 points, dude. I need some more. I'm complaining for no reason, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Top to bottom, like defensive performances added up plus offensive performances added up, they are right there for the best team in the entire league. I think, I think we all know that, and we're going to have to know that moving forward. You're right; they could lose one of these next divisional games. I think the more interesting story on this one is how bad the Seahawks looked. I think it is officially time to have the discussion about, was Geno Smith a one-year wonder? I mean, thank God they didn't pay him that much to come back. He was like, well, you were on the bench for how many years and you had one good one? Like, show it to us one more time. You know what I'm saying? Kenneth Walker shut down. Zach Charbonnet, not a factor. Geno Smith, 0 touchdowns, 1 interceptions. Geno Smith's 1 interception thrown to?
He threw it to Geno Stone.
He threw it to the other Geno.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jackson Smith and Jigba finally sort of got involved, which is what Seahawks fans, I'm sure, have been wanting to see. But yeah, I think that's the more interesting side of this lopsided loss, because they have looked sort of like they could challenge the Niners for the division, because I really do think the Niners could win or could lose again this week and like drop 4 in a row. But I mean, if the Seahawks are going to play like this, I don't think there's a challenge in the division anymore. Tell me what you think.
I was thinking the same thing. This is, this was a bad performance. You can throw it away if you want, but they had some easy games. Maybe they should have won, like the Rams, and now we're finding out the Rams aren't as good. They beat the Panthers and the Giants and the Cardinals already this year. That's kind of inflating things. And they lost. Like, all the losses are understandable. You lose on the road to the Ravens. You lose on the road to the Bengals. If you lose to the Rams, it's first week. Sean McVay has all offseason to prepare for it. But now you have to win these next two, Commanders and Rams, to go back up to maybe 7-3 to really put the pressure on the 49ers, because after that you have a brutal schedule. You have 49ers, Cowboys, 49ers, Eagles. Right after that, this card games are going to come in the NFL at some point in the season. So I think Seattle. In our preseason show, I picked them to win the NFC West. Still picked the 49ers to the playoffs, but it was mostly because of the injuries build up that the 49ers have every year. And that's maybe the thing that, if the 49ers are injured, maybe the Seahawks can still win. Trent Williams, I believe they're 3-6 without Trent Williams in the lineup, the 49ers, over the last several years. So that's that's something they can hold on to. But I think I'm with you. I think this is a game where they would have won, or at least played competitively. Maybe it helps them with their momentum going into this next two games they have to win before the tough stretch.
So let me ask you one more thing. Are Just for the rest of the season, we're halfway through now. For the rest of the season, do you expect them to be closer to like the giant killer when they beat the Lions, or something like this where they lose to good teams?
I think they'll be closer to the giant killer. They traded for Leonard Williams. I think that'll help out a ton. The secondary already has plenty of good players. The defense, I think, will rebound. The Ravens are just, they're a tough matchup. I know a lot of people have talked about if you playing the Ravens, there's no one in the NFC that really you have to game plan like you do for Lamar Jackson. So he has a very good record against the NFC. I don't know what it is top of my head, but I know he has a very good record. So I would throw this game out the window. Just get ready for the second half of the year. I do expect, with their three wide receivers, Jackson Smith and Jigba, starting to get more and more comfortable. I think the offense will come to as well. I think they can be a playoff team. I think they can maybe win a game in the playoffs as long as they don't match up with maybe a healthy 49ers, Cowboys, or Eagles. Maybe even, I think probably could beat the Cowboys too, the ways they go up and down too. So I think they'll bounce back. Yeah, for sure. So I think they'll bounce back pretty well. It's just like I said, tough matchup, and a lot of respect to Lamar for being different.
Yep, he's different.
Next one up, we have the Texans beating the Buccaneers 39-37. This was one of the most fun games of the entire weekend. Maybe didn't look like it on paper going into it, but man, did a lot of things happen. I mean, it was back and forth all game. You had, Mike Evans, Rashad White making plays, and Chris Godwin as well for the Buccaneers. But C.J. Stroud I know he had a bad game the week before, but showed that he could bounce back really well. Going to take another victory lap here, as saying he was quarterback one in my rankings. Always have to take the victory laps here because no one will give you credit unless you give it to yourself these days. 470 yards, 5 touchdowns, ends up getting them to come back in this game. The Texans get an important field goal from Dare Ogunbowale, a running back, because their kicker gets hurt in this game. It's just had everything you could have wanted in this game if you're a Texans fan. Yes, it was a tough loss for Buccaneers fan, but at least you had some points. It was fun. It was, I think talking about the Texans like they're some lowly team is done for now.
Absolutely. 470 yards for C.J. Stroud is a rookie record. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He still has only 1 interception on the season. Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation is done. It is over. Mm-hmm. Noah Brown with 153 yards receiving. If you played him in your 14-man league, congratulations. Tank Dell with 2 touchdowns. Tank Dell looks good, dude. I don't know how you felt about him coming out of the draft, but he looks really good. I got to be honest. There's just so much to talk about with the Texans that I'll go the other direction for just a second. I'm starting to feel bad for Baker, dude. He's absolutely playing his ass off, and he continues to lose these really, really close games. I mean, if Chris Godwin had turned his head, you know what I mean? They would have a game on that Hail Mary versus the Buffalo Bills. 2 touchdowns for him, no interceptions. I mean, he's sort of proving that he can run this offense. It's just heartbreak after heartbreak for him this year. I feel bad. I like Baker. I know a lot of people don't, but I have a lot of respect for the guy. What do you think about Baker and these weapons through the offseason? Do you think they'll sort of find a way to pay them both, or what?
Yeah, I think if they win a couple games, they'll do it and they'll keep them. if they end up losing a lot more games and they get positioned to take one of the rookie quarterbacks, I think they're gonna go that way. It's just the way of the NFL. Ben, I'm gonna ask you this question. I already know the answer to, but just to get your answer,
Mhm. Okay.
would you rather have Baker Mayfield on a 1 year, $4 million salary, or Daniel Jones on a $40 million salary?
I would rather have Baker Mayfield. Thank you.
Yeah, so
Um,
it's the quarterback market we've been talking. It needs like a middle ground. I think Geno Smith is the middle ground. They've given him like a lot of money for most positions, but middle ground for quarterbacks, and they can cut him after this year if it doesn't work out. So the Seahawks, I know we mentioned them before. That was a very good contract by them. But Buccaneers, we got like Baker Mayfield playing for $4 million. Like we mentioned Josh Dobbs. He got traded to the Rams last year, and he had to start pretty quickly. I think he has more. I think he had more reps than Josh Dobbs did, but he showed he could figure it out too. So I don't know. I think if you're a team, especially like the Bucks, who have weapons like they do, you don't have to go all in for an elite quarterback. We've seen that like teams like the 49ers, who have never had an elite quarterback since the days of Steve Young and Joe Montana, um, that they've won games, won playoff games. Everyone wants that quarterback, but if you don't have that guy, don't give someone that you're not in love with $40 million.
yep. And last thing I'll say is this continues to be this season continues to show us that the trade deadline should be later in the season. Halloween is too early because a lot of these teams still think they have life and they do not. And a lot of teams, like the Vikings that we just talked about, think they're dead in the water and they're not. But either way, congratulations to C.J. Stroud. He looks insane, and it makes the Panthers pick look worse and worse as these weeks roll by.
Yeah, I have to point out there's people who are comparing CJ Stroud to RG3 on national media outlets. I won't name them. I'm not going to drag them, but if you're talking about the accuracy out of college, especially the deep accuracy, I see it. But they play totally different. So watch the games.
They're
This is a very
completely different players. That's so weird.
yeah. I
I
mean,
didn't see that.
I think it would. I won't. I'll tell you off air because I don't want to drag anyone. But
Okay, yeah. All right,
he's
yeah.
CJ Stroud's accuracy and touch passing. Talking about a little bit of college football here. Ohio State didn't allow him to do the things that made him great when they did open up the offense against Georgia in the college football playoff. But I know you watched at least the first half with me while we were at a New Year's Eve party. They were kicking some butt, and then they didn't do that in the other games. They lost to Michigan because they weren't opening things up to their many talented receivers and the quarterback that, as you said, is going to win Rookie of the Year pretty much already, and it's only week 10. So great.
Mhm.
All right, so you mentioned the Panthers and their number one pick, Bryce Young. It was a game to forget for him. The Colts went 27-13. Bryce Young throws 3 interceptions, 2 of them to Kenny Moore, 2 of them returned for touchdowns. Kenny Moore is tied for the lead with Bryce Young touchdowns this year, which is not good for him. I think needs to be this year, you have to go all in to make sure you help Bryce Young get better. That includes offensive line, getting more offensive minds in that room. I mean, I know Frank Reich is, but he's kind of didn't work out in Indianapolis and had some issues there. I think you need to put all of it. Adam Thielen is his leading receiver, and Adam Thielen is not the Adam Thielen of old. So I would do that if I were the Panthers. The Colts, they got the two-headed monster at running back in Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor, and they're staying alive 4-5 right now. It's good for them. I don't think they do anything long-term, especially because their defense isn't what it used to be, and there seems to be some locker room issues with their linebacker usage is really causing a stir. So Darius Leonard specifically isn't playing as much as he used to, and he was a star. So good win for the Colts, and for the Panthers, you got to support this. You drafted number one overall. You got to support them better than this.
Yeah, completely agreed. You said 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions, 2 pick sixes in the game. It's it's looking dire, and not just because they're starting a rookie quarterback behind a bad offensive line, which I had been talking about all offseason. It was like, you can't draft this 5'9" kid behind this awful offensive line. But anyway, it's the problem is that they traded so much away to get him, and now they do not have a first round pick. I think the only way to do what you just said, which is support him, he needs linemen, he needs wide receivers. He probably needs a better running back. He doesn't probably. He needs a better running back. I think the only way you do this is to do the one thing you said you weren't going to do, and find a way to trade Brian Burns in the offseason. Does his contract? Does that make sense contract wise? Do you know?
I think you can for sure. I think it'll work
Okay,
out
all
for him.
right. Um, I think you need to trade him for. I mean, literally, not just like a first round pick. Like you may forego the first round altogether and be like, I don't know, man, give me three threes. You know what I'm saying? As far as the Colts go, Gardner continues to be an insane person. 127 yards for one touchdown. I don't mean insane on the football field. I mean he is an insane person. Um, Jonathan Taylor, still not the Jonathan Taylor of old. Making this like running back holdout thing look a little bit weird. Although I'm 100% supportive of the running backs in that whole situation, but like he's he's not really popped again this year. Um, it's a more this was a more boring game than the score might have you than the score might lead you to believe. 27 points sounds like a lot. If you watch this game, I mean, hey, more power to you. But like I said, that's the big takeaway is you are 100% spot on. Support Bryce Young in the offseason. Do what you need to do. Find a way to make this offense click because as we continue to see, you can make a run for your division, especially this NFC South. You can make a run for your division with a good to very good offense, somewhere in between there, and a bad defense. You just can. So do that and then fix the defense later on. But that's about all I have to say about this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. They could have done something where they stayed at number 9 and taken Will Levis and kept all their picks, and maybe they're in a better situation. It's not always worth it trading up for these guys, especially like we knew in this draft class it wasn't a generational quarterback draft class, at least going in. That yes, CJ Stroud's playing better than anyone expected, but they weren't guys that necessarily were worth giving up the farm. Whether it wasn't the Andrew Luck RG3 draft coming into it, but just have to think about sometimes with some of these roster moves, you get antsy, and some of these teams don't want to get apathetic fans, so they make these moves. And what are they doing after the Panthers? Fired Matt Rule, they get Frank Reich, who was fired from the Colts, and they draft Bryce. They trade up to draft Bryce Young. They have to go up DJ Moore in the process, giving up one of their better players. It's a mess. Sometimes you have to take the longer route to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And this looks like a long route because they are, I believe, they have the worst record in the league. So they would have the number 1 overall pick right now if they hadn't traded it to the Bears, who might have the number 2 overall pick in the league. So, I mean, as a Packers fan, I get a little bit scared about that, them potentially having the first 2 overall picks. But again, if there's a team that's going to find a way to mess up a generationally talented quarterback, it will be the Bears.
That's true. That is very true.
Sorry.
Never had a quarterback in their lives, and if your best quarterback conversation kind of starts with Jim McMahon Jim McMahon and Jake Cutler, yeah, you're not doing too good. So, the next one up, Ben, we have to go over the Raiders firing Josh McDaniels, something that we've talked at the Game House and on the podcast before. Just not a great hire to start with. It's not that he worked with Bill Belichick. It's also that he also has already failed as a head coach. He was caught cheating with the Broncos, and then after they caught him cheating, the record went downhill very fast. The players hated him, and in a meeting this week, they tried to rile everyone up because really they don't have enough money to fire him. At least that was the reports last year. They ended up firing him this week, but in a meeting, he asked Antonio Pierce to speak to the team. Antonio Pierce is a former player for the Giants, and Pierce said, you guys gotta buy in. Just because the record's bad right now, the Giants, we beat the Patriots in 2007 when no one thought we could, or 2011, whichever one he referenced. And Josh McDaniels got mad, and that just apparently really divided the locker room. And players went to Mark Davis and was talking about, hey, this sucks, this is awful. And he ended up firing him, and now Antonio Pierce is the guy where the players love. It looks like everything's settling down, and it manifested in this game against the Giants. They won 30-6. And one thing I like about Pierce being named the head coach, he goes to Aiden O'Connell, who he says is the best quarterback on the roster, and he had a decent game. He protected the football, wasn't asked to do too much. But he also said, we're going to be, the Cowboys in the 90s. They featured Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin. We have a very talented running back who led the league in yards last year, Josh Jacobs. We're going to give him the ball. Although it didn't come to fruition this week, he said we're going to get Devontae Adams the ball too. instead of targeting Jacoby Myers a million times a game, instead of giving it to your best receiver. So, long-winded way to say the Raiders went from something where it was very, I would say, negative around the whole fan base a week ago to something where there's actually some encouragement going on.
Yeah, you're right. When Antonio Pierce took over, it seems clear that he had the game plan in mind of like, I can't do what Josh McDaniels was doing. That's why everyone was so mad. So Josh Jacobs has 2 touchdowns. I mean, you're right. Devontae Adams still didn't get the ball, but I mean, it seems to be in the crystal ball that he's going to be featured a lot more. I think they were right to start Aiden O'Connell. He looked really good in the preseason. Um, and Antonio Pierce can't stop beating the Giants. First of all, I believe he was wasn't he fired in college football for a tampering scandal?
Yeah, it was part of Herm Edwards' staff. He was fired for some illegal recruiting things, and it's weird how he went from that just a couple, like I think 2 years ago, maybe 1 year ago, I don't know, to being where he is now.
Yeah, um, but you're right. Obviously, the Josh McDaniels thing wasn't working, and the weird Bill Belichick heads that are like yelling like, "Well, he needed 3 years to make it work." No, you were throwing the ball to Jacoby Myers constantly when you had Devonte Adams on the roster, who I maintain is shoulder to shoulder with Justin Jefferson. And the only reason you don't think so, the royal you, not Joe, is because Justin Jefferson gets the ball more. If Devonte Adams would get the ball more, which he should because he is open, like you would rightfully think that he is at least tied for the best receiver in the league. Um, as far as also one more thing, Josh McDaniels has now been fired twice within 2 years, and still has twice within 2 years of 2 different jobs, and still has a playoff win, which is strange. But I think the other story is the Giants. I mean, I absolutely, you cannot tell me that you, Joe, do not feel kinship with this Tommy DeVito guy. You can't tell me
Oh,
that.
DeTulio and DeVito, yeah, I
Yeah.
I think so first of all, Daniel Jones out for the season, torn ACL. As mentioned, we joked about his contract earlier. Not a joke that he tore his ACL and he's got to recover.
Yeah.
Maybe his last game with the Giants, honestly, because the way they might move on and get a draft pick quarterback this year, that might happen. But I feel like that is how it would go if I were an NFL quarterback. I'd be Tommy DeVito. I'd be completing no passes. I'd be running, getting my head, kicked off. I'd be talking trash the whole time, like Tommy DeVito is. It's great to watch. It's like everyone talks about these hypotheticals, and like I think like if you gave me 5 rushes, I can get a yard. I think that's just like it's more offensive line than what the running back's doing at that rate. But if you're like, oh, I could complete 50% of my passes in the NFL. No, you couldn't. We have Tommy DeVito, who was a solid player at Syracuse, which is a solid college football team and a solid conference, ACC. He's out here doing this and. Feel some kinship with him. I was kind of rooting for him too because of the Italian name and because, well, I don't know. I feel a little bit bad for Giants fans. I mean, you had Daniel Jones. You gave him all that money. That's kind of stinks. Now he's hurt. Tyrod Taylor also hurt. But yeah, I think I do feel a little bit kinship with him. I think it's cool when for me personally too, when there's players that like people don't know in the NFL circles, like who the heck is Tommy DeVito? I'm like, oh yeah. He went to Syracuse. He's really not that good or whatever, but it's cool. And same Tyson Bagent. Oh yeah, he's the arm wrestling guy. It's fun to say those stories, but yeah, from Shepherd University. His last
Shepherd.
I think it's Pennsylvania. I don't know. I think it's Pennsylvania, but his last college game, I think he threw 3 picks to the Colorado School of the Mines or something. So there you go.
That's sick.
Yeah. But yeah,
Right.
the Raiders win, looking good. We're gonna obviously be tracking that the next couple of weeks here. Not in the sense of the AFC West, like they're going to win the AFC West or really push for a playoff spot, but I know there's a lot of fantasy implications with Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams. Obviously, do they keep Antonio Pierce as head coach next year? That would be the cheapest option, so that's my expectation if they win a couple games, but we'll see.
Yeah. Last thing on this. Do you think? I mean, obviously, if you don't remember, last time they fired a coach, it was John Gruden due to some scandals. Rich Bisaccia, the special teams coach, took over, rallied the troops, got them all the way to the playoffs for the first time in a while. They did lose that playoff game to the Bengals, but the Bengals were on the run of destiny that year. You can't really hold that against them. Do you think Antonio Pierce like whatever. That's such an open-ended question. What is the percentage that you feel Antonio Pierce goes on a Rich Bisaccia run here?
Rich Bisaccia run, I would say 10%. I think maybe that's even
They
high.
are 4-5.
Right.
They're one game behind the Buffalo Bills.
Right, but the only problem is that all the AFC teams are all right there. So like as we mentioned, the AFC North is all above them in terms of record right now. The
I
AFC
know.
East.
I feel the same way. I was just trying to confuse you.
No, you're good. I do think there's a chance Antonio Pierce could be a good head coach long term, which is surprising. I think he's a players coach, especially if they can get an offensive coordinator in there that knows what he's doing. Um, an offensive mind outside of Josh McDaniels. That I think he could be a good head coach. I think a lot of times you look at like, oh, we want an offensive guru or defensive guru, but Bisaccia did well with the Raiders when he got his chance. John Harbaugh's been at the Ravens forever after being a special teams coach and just really trusting his players and trusting his coaches as well. If you get the good people, a good staff around you, a good culture, you can do it. So I think he could be.
Yeah, I think to stop Raiders fans from just flipping the Death Star over with their bare hands, I think you can't if Antonio Pierce does well, and I'm talking like ends the year 9-8, 8-9.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you do this big splashy move like you have like with John Gruden and Josh McDaniels, because rumors are swirling around Jim Harbaugh and Lincoln Riley, and I don't think you do it again for a third time. I think I think the entire city would go insane. I mean, Vegas is already pretty crazy anyway. But hey, Golden Knights got one, so lean on that, I guess.
There you go. All right, the last of the 4 p.m. Eastern Time games, we have the Eagles beating the Cowboys 28-23. This is, I think, one of the better played games of the NFL season by both teams, which is good for the Eagles. We've been kind of ragging on them that they haven't played up to their potential this year. For the Cowboys, the inconsistencies, one game they'll blow a team out, the next game they'll lose to a team they shouldn't. We'll start with the Cowboys side for me first, but Dak Prescott had a fantastic game. Yes, he couldn't come up in the last little bit there, the two last drives that he had, but 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. For a team that can't run the ball, they got CeeDee Lamb, a lot of catches, 11 for 191. Very good game. Gives me more encouragement heading into the back half of the season if you can match up on the road in a tough place to play like that. And for the Eagles, it also gives me a lot more encouragement because, to be honest, they don't really play that well this year. That Jalen Hurts is turning over the ball too much, and the fact that they beat a good team, I think, is a good thing going forward. At 8-1, they should be the favorite to win the NFC. They should be the favorite to be the number 1 seed, and getting things going pretty good now is going to be good for them later on too.
Yeah, I will completely agree that I think Dak Prescott is playing. I mean, so much better than last year. I mean, no interceptions again in this game, but I will push back. I don't. I think this loss is a lot more concerning than most Cowboys fans are painting it out to be. Like, sure, they only lost by 5, and CeeDee Lamb was a couple yards short of the goal line to end it. Which I'm not putting that on Dak at all. I think because if you watch that play again, CeeDee Lamb sort of like shortened his route. But anyway,
Yeah.
I think this is concerning because, I mean, the the Eagles and Cowboys. I think the quarterback is a wash at this point with Jalen Hurts turning over the ball, but their running backs are better. Their wide receivers are better. Their offensive line is better. Their defensive line is better. Their special teams are better. Hey, your kicker's pretty good. But I think the only like real clear advantage is is the secondary. I think Philadelphia's secondary is continuing to be really really bad, and no one's talking about that because it doesn't matter almost because if you can like you can't like if you can block the 7 all pros they have on their defensive line, then their secondary can get torched. But not everyone's going to do that,
Mm-hmm.
especially not in the playoffs when they're playing with their hair on fire. I do think that the Cowboys should honestly be favored in Dallas, but the problem is home field advantage, and the Eagles are 8-1, and they're still sort of figuring it out. I think this is concerning for the Cowboys' playoff implications as far as going very deep, getting back to the NFC Championship game, and that's not. I really truly believe that. I really truly mean this. It's not really an indictment on anyone on the Cowboys except for Jerry Jones. It's just how good the Eagles are. Like they're not playing their best, and they're still winning all of these games. Um, Brandon Cooks has been I, a little better these past 3 weeks,
Yeah.
but like when Dak's playing this well and you don't go get a running back, like and your offensive line continues to be injured, and Deron Bland isn't getting a pick six for the fourth time.
Hmm.
I just the NFC playoffs are going to be a little bit harder than I think Cowboys fans are ready to believe. But then again, all these playoff games are one game, and anything can happen in one game.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents on it.
No, I think you have some valid points. I would beginning of the season I said I'd pick the Cowboys in the NFC playoffs uh, over anyone not named the Eagles or 49ers. I think I'm in the same spot here because even though the 49ers are struggling, when they were healthy, they whooped the Cowboys. And the Eagles still have that front seven depth, which when the weather gets colder, front seven on defense and their offensive line, I think is going to play a factor. My biggest issues right now are the running game. I do think they need a bruising running back, and that's something that people kind of forgot with Zeke. I'm not saying they should have paid Zeke a lot of money or anything, or even kept him, but you can go get a bruising running back. Like Leonard Fournette's up in Buffalo. You could have signed him before he did that, and then allow Tony Pollard to be more dynamic, and just Mike
And
McCarthy.
you can't convince me that before the trade deadline, like let's say Derrick Henry cost two firsts for whatever reason, you don't want to do that. You can't convince me that they couldn't have gone and gotten like someone like C.J. Henderson, who's a bit of a bowling ball. You know what I mean? From the Rams, like I don't get it. They had a few weaknesses that they could have really shorn up, and they just didn't do it.
Yeah,
And that is so antithetical to everything we've been told to believe about Jerry Jones. And
yeah,
this is all coming from the heart because I'm a Packers fan, so I have no ill will toward the Cowboys. They've never threatened my team once, and that sounds like it sounds like I'm talking smack, but seriously, like they they're like this iconic franchise, and like you're so close, and you just stand pat on. I mean, Tony Pollard is good, but he's a speedster. You need someone to go hit somebody in the mouth, like
hmm,
maybe another offensive lineman because yours keeps getting hurt. Like again, the secondary is playing really well, and Micah Parsons is insane. You're right there, dude.
hmm.
You're so close. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Like I said, I appreciate the insight. Like I said, I'm want them to get a bruising running back. There's still guys free agent wise or guys you could sign to do it. I believe you meant Daryl Henderson, not T.J. Henderson, but
Oh, I did. I
yeah.
meant Darrell Henderson.
just
My
just so
bad.
just so we don't get anyone calling you saying that you don't know ball.
Yeah.
But I think that's concerning to me. Terrence Steele at right tackle has not played his best season, and then also the last thing that I'll say is Mike McCarthy, man, the end of game situations. Yes, Dak has had his blunders in terms of clock management, but that's on a head coach too to know when to use your timeouts, to know when to run certain plays. To do not run the ball when you're down by scores and you have to like get stopped short of a first down. That's on him. He's got to do better. I don't know if I have the faith in him to do better. So I think they can beat a team like last year. They beat the Bucks in the first round. The Bucks had a losing record. If they get matched up as they're the first wild card and they play the worst division winner, yeah, I think they win that game. And then the next round, if they get matched up with the 49ers or Eagles, yeah, I think they probably lose that game. It's a tale as old as time. I wish they would have been more aggressive at the deadline. The Cowboys have a great PR staff. We made all of our trades before the season when we got Stephon Gilmore. That's great. You're in a different position now than you were when you got Stephon Gilmore. We're all happy he's with the Cowboys, but you could have get someone else. So I'm with you, and I
That's an
think
interesting thing to say about Mike McCarthy too, because um, if you think about when Mike McCarthy won his Super Bowl with Green Bay, he had one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I believe Dak is top 10. Um, and he had a top five defense, and I believe this defense is top five. And the only thing missing, well, he had a number one in Jordy Nelson, and a number two, and I guess Greg Jennings and Brandon Cooks. Yeah, I'd take Jennings over Cooks right now. But like the difference is James Jones. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like the difference is those running backs that Green Bay had. Like these teams are so similar, and they're just one piece away, and like that's what drives me crazy. But um, the clock management stuff, like it's he's the Cowboys are your team for the most part. Like you can speak a little bit more to that, but I just don't think the clock management would be as glaring. Like people who play Madden all the time would be like, you know, hey, shouldn't have done that. But it just wouldn't be as glaring if they just had that one more piece. So,
Yeah.
this has been all doom and gloom on the Cowboys side. They're still a really, really good team that could go far because the playoffs are one and done, and literally anything could happen. Especially when you have a turnover hungry defense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, Michael Parsons could swat the ball out of anyone's hands at any point. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat that the unders are hitting in 60% of games this year, 61%, which is the best of all season. I think a lot of credit goes to these guys like Myles Garrett that you mentioned earlier, TJ Watt, which we're going to talk about more with that Packers pick here later on, and like Micah Parsons. They're just getting after the quarterbacks, and these aggressive secondaries taking advantage. So Cowboys definitely could turn things around, and 3 losses, one of them to the Eagles, one of them to the 49ers, one of them that inexplicable loss to the Cardinals, but they can get back on track in the next couple of weeks here and get back to being thought of as the top 3 team in the NFC if they aren't still already.
Yep.
All right, Bengals and Bills, Sunday Night Football, raucous environment. They striped the jungle as they created a good home field advantage. They did some cool stuff for Damar Hamlin, who came back in town as he honored some of the people who helped him at UC Medical Center. This is the Bengals team I think we've been waiting to see. They diced them up, and Joe Burrow had 348 yards, 2 touchdowns. They got started early too, which is one of the biggest pet peeves the Bengal fans have is, oh, it's just run, pass, and we get stopped for the first half. Well, they scored 21 first half points, go up 21-7. It's a lot more easy to win these games when you go up by that many points because they only needed 3 points in the second half to win 24-18. Couple notes here. It seems like the Bills are still Josh Allen or bust. They have no running game. Stephon Diggs is still a great receiver, and it's just those two are pretty much the offense doesn't work. The defense is totally banged up, not very good right now, and the Bengals did lose Jamar Chase he did play through it, but a back injury they think that might keep him out in the future. That could be a big problem because the Bengals have struggled when their top 3 receivers have one person missing. But good for T. Higgins to get 8 catches for 110 yards. That was huge because he hasn't had a good game this season yet. And I think if you're the Bengals fan, you're happy that they're rolling on all cylinders. Even the tight ends got going in this game. It's crazy. The tight end group has been heavily criticized. Perfect game, exactly how you'd want to draw it up.
The tight ends have been heavily criticized by Joe, is what he means. Yeah, no, this is the Bengals team we all like. You're right. This is the one we've been waiting for. I think we all saw the pieces of it while Joe Burrow was injured, and now he's healthy, and nobody wants to play them. Little discouraged about only 3 points in the fourth quarter because that's normally when Joe Burrow comes alive. But it seems like he's almost better when he's down, and he never was in this game. Or that's a lie. The Bills scored first. Am I wrong?
I thought the Bengals did, but I could be wrong.
Oh well, then never mind. Yeah, T. Higgins getting going is very encouraging. Joe Mixon continues to be almost underutilized, even though what Joe is saying is true that lots of Bengals fans are tired of run, pass. It just seems like there have to be ways to get him going to really open up that play action. Jamar Chase injury, we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. But this is the proverbial team that no one wants to play, and I know all the pundits are saying okay, but the hard part of their schedule is starting. They barely got through the easy part, but this is what they do. They beat teams that are, purported to be better than them. The only issue I have is their playoffs have almost started already. You know what I mean? They can only lose 2 more games in this division. Not in division. They can only lose 2 more games for the rest of the season for people to not be absolutely panicking. But everyone knows about the Bengals. Joe Burrow's insane. My pick for the best quarterback in the league. I have an article on that I'm sure the comments are really, really sane on. But as far as the Bills go, I mean, the defensive injuries are just horrendous. Absolutely next level bad. Um, Josh Allen, everyone calling him roller coaster Josh Allen. He did have an ill-advised throw that turned into an interception in this game. But it's just hard because this is the team that starts slow. People are mad at the Bengals for starting slow. This team finds no rhythm other than Josh go make a play, which is fine because Josh is a good quarterback. But like for these defenses that see him a lot and that are ready for him, I think that's why they lose to the Patriots so often is because the Patriots see him all the time and they're ready for that kind of thing. And the Bengals have played them 3 times in the past 2 years. I think it's just hard for them to set a rhythm. And I've given up on expecting Buffalo to have a running game that isn't Josh Allen. I think Leonard Fournette coming into the fold may mean something, but I truly don't know what that might look like because I've never seen Josh Allen have a running game. Stephon Diggs is still awesome. Gabe Davis is either really great or on a milk carton, which is hard. But yeah, I'm not ready to say the Bills season is over, but they are firmly in wild card territory at this point. They're going on the road in the playoffs if they make it.
Yeah, especially with the Dolphins. I mean, yeah, they have 3 losses, but they look a lot better than the Bills do right now. And for the Bengals too, yeah, the schedule gets a little tougher. But if they execute these next couple games, I mean, they have the Texans coming in this week. If they win that to go to 6-3, that with the AFC being so tight, that could really help solidify maybe not the AFC North, but the playoff chances at least. It's always good to see Burrow coming back and playing well because he's able to escape the pocket, escape pressure, and make plays for himself that he was not able to make in the first couple weeks of the season. So they weathered the storm. They kept it alive, and it looks like now they'll be making their little run. And the good news is for them, they're in last place in their division right now. Is that I think the Browns and Ravens play this week. They're making that pick. We'll be rooting for your Packers to beat the Steelers, but a lot of times we've seen the schedule be a little bit easier for some of these other AFC North teams, as is the case when they come in lower positions in the division. But I'm sure it'll get tougher for them too in the next couple weeks here too, as they play each other and some other good teams.
Yeah, I think the main thing here is Bengals fans have to be fed up at this point with the slow starts because the Bengals need these playoff games at home, and they're not going to get it yet again. The good news is, yeah, they have these 3 losses. They're all in conference, but they can still go 4-2 in this division, which is kind of insane. Um, so there is light at the end of the tunnel. As far as playoff hopes go, I mean, clearly because Joe Burrow's so awesome, but I mean, they need this number 1 seed, and they're not going to get it as long as they keep wasting early seasons. Like, it's really frustrating to watch because, like, this city needs a playoff game at home, needs an AFC championship game at home, is what I mean.
Absolutely, and it's still a lot of things possible with the AFC. But when you look at like the Ravens only have 2 losses, the Chiefs only have 2 losses. Hoping both of them collapse, it's not one that will likely happen. So all the Bengals can do is control, just keep on winning, and they'll have to try to hope that other teams lose. But you're right, they do need home playoff games. That is something that totally bit them in the ass last year against the Chiefs, and they could have won that game. So definitely frustrating for Bengals fans for sure. All right, Monday Night Football, Ben. We have the Chargers beating the Jets 27-6. I don't have too much on this game because it's everything we already know, right? Like, the Chargers actually didn't play that well offensively. It was just the fact that the Jets' offense got nothing going and set the opposing offense, the Chargers, up well. 27-6. Yeah, I don't know why the Jets didn't go get a quarterback. They could have given Zach Wilson like 2 or 3 weeks and said, "Hey, this is not the guy," and then decided to trade for. Again, Jacoby Brissett, Josh Dobbs, any of these guys who were going around. The only thing Zach Wilson needs to do now is just keep it afloat for Aaron Rodgers to come back. Ben, don't know if you saw this. He was throwing 55-yard passes in pregame warmups yesterday. So it looks like he's going to come back. He said in the postgame he's going to be a couple more weeks, but I guess you can't really bank on that. But if that's what they're operating under, Zach Wilson, all he has to do is keep it steady, go 4-4, maybe go 5-5 after this, and then Aaron Rodgers might be back. I don't know.
Yeah. Only thing I have to say about this game is Brandon Staley continuing to keep his job alive. Justin Herbert not throwing a touchdown pass, which is a little strange. Austin Eckler looked good except for some pretty bad drops. And then, yeah, the Jets just it is shocking that their season is alive. I think 4-4 is like you tell someone that you tell a Jets fan that they lose Aaron Rodgers in the fourth play of the season, and through 9 weeks they're 4-4. They'd be like, "What? We are?" You know what I mean? I just Aaron Rodgers needs to come back. This offense looks pretty pitiful at times, but the defense is doing enough to win. And then Brandon Staley just holding on by a thread to this job. Chargers have too much talent on this team to be 4-4, but I'm sure we've gone longer than UNC's normally do. So I can I'll just move past this one. Boring game to watch. I'll be honest with you. Caught up on some shows during the second half.
Yeah, the line was like only 2.5 in favor of the Chargers. I definitely bet on that and was like, I don't really understand it, but if he does come back, maybe in December, you say that's give him a couple more weeks to get back, and then it puts a lot of pressure on Aaron Rodgers if they do have a losing record to kind of be the savior. And not that he hasn't done that before for your Packers, but it's in a division where you have the Dolphins and the Bills, and you have a couple games with the Dolphins left this season. It could be very tough. So even him coming back doesn't guarantee anything. The offense is averaging 14 points a game. They averaged 17 last year when they almost made the playoffs. They're worse this year. So after they went and got more players and everything, it's kind of astounding. So.
Yep.
All right, so we'll get to our weekly picks. We're going to start it off.
Give me the lines. I'm not going to look them up. I'm just going to blind react.
I'm going to give you the lines. Thursday at 8:15. It is a Thursday night game. We know these aren't the greatest all the time. This one will not be the greatest, but it has some storylines going. We have the Carolina Panthers at the Chicago Bears. We have the DJ Moore trade, the Bryce Young trade, all that fun stuff going on. The Bears are favored by 3.5 at home.
If you bet this game, you're a psychopath. Why would you do this? The Panthers are favored at home.
No, the Bears are favored at home by 3.5.
Bears are favored at home. Sorry. I will take. I'll take the Panthers in this game. I think. I don't know why. Because I don't believe in either of them. So I don't know. Let the road team win. I'm sorry. I gambling really isn't my forte, and you just started me off on who would bet this game. So I'll have more insight later on.
Yeah,
sure. I'll take the Panthers straight up money line.
All right, cool. My philosophy on Thursday night games, unless there is an elite team playing, I go with the points against the spread, 3.5. I mean, I feel like the teams are evenly matched. And the Bears, because they're the home team, and you might think, oh, that's kind of a close margin. Well, how many games end in a field goal result in the NFL every week? It's plenty of them. So I'm going with that. We know Justin Fields is questionable for this game, and if he does play, he will not be 100%. Remember, he hurt his thumb, so maybe they run the ball with him and they can actually cover. But these are two bad teams. I'll take the Panthers with the points. I'll take the Bears at home with the money line. I'll hedge my bet there. That's all I'll do. All right, Sunday we have another Frankfurt game, Frankfurt, Germany. It is the Colts and Patriots, the old rivals from early in the 2000s. The Colts are favored by 1.5 points in Germany.
First of all, I'll take the under on these international games. Unders are hitting this year. Colts money line and against the spread. I think there's something about Gardner Minshew playing in Germany makes me think he's going to light them up. I can't explain that really.
Yeah, I feel like he definitely could. I am looking for this Colts offense to have a pretty good game. The Patriots defense is good, but they can't possess the ball. Mac Jones is not, obviously not it that we talked about earlier. I I don't see how this goes well for the Patriots other than it's just like you said, a weird Germany game, or maybe something weird happens and sometimes results that we don't expect to happen. But I'm going Colts. I think their running game can kind of get up early. You can kind of ice the wind with that. And I think their defense still has plenty of talent on it. They'll figure out the locker room issues, I think, down the stretch and still be a solid team. Not one that'll make the playoffs, but a solid team.
Just think about how grumpy is Bill Belichick how grumpy Bill Belichick is to play on Thursday. Like, can you imagine that plane ride with him to Germany? God, that's got to be the most miserable place to be.
Oh yeah, 100%. I don't know. He's probably against playing on Thursdays. He's probably against playing on any international games, and the NFL is just like, yeah, we'll keep our money. You keep on doing what you're doing. So.
Yep.
All right, the game that you specifically want to pick here, Ben, we have the Packers at the Steelers. The Steelers are favored by 3 at home. I know there's, like I said, we both know some Steelers fans in our lives that make it easy to root against the Steelers. Who are you going with here?
So Steelers being favored by 3 means on a neutral field, this would be a pick'em, which is so strange to me. But 3 is the perfect line. 3 plus the hook. Honestly, I would say for everybody like Packers, because I feel like 4 points is like right at what this game is going to be. My significant other is a Steelers fan, and in good conscience, I will not pick them against my team. It is not happening. I will pick the Packers plus 3.5. Hopefully they win. But for everyone else out there, maybe take the opposite of my advice. I'm not doing it, but take the opposite of my advice if you're someone else.
Yeah, I'm going the Steelers to cover the 3-point spread there. Again, they're at home. Mike Tomlin can get them to win at home. Yes, there's the locker room issues with George Pickens, but nothing they haven't dealt with before. I expect them to get Pickens, to scheme him open against this Joe Barry defense and at least to get him some touches to keep him happy. And, I think TJ Watt will not make it a happy day for Jordan Love. So I'm going to go Steelers to win and cover. I do think it's going to be a close game, though, because, both these teams I don't think are the best this season, even though the Steelers' record would indicate that maybe they are.
Yeah.
Moving on, we have a rematch of the Minneapolis Miracle. We have the New Orleans Saints at the Minnesota Vikings. The Saints are favored by 2.5 on the road.
Take the Vikings in this one. They're playing at home. They're coming off the high of Josh Dobbs not knowing anybody's name. Oh, sorry, I'll take my hat off. Not knowing anybody's name. And learning the cadence on the sideline during the game. I think that's going to continue. Josh Dobbs is clearly an incredibly smart dude. And the Saints are a bad team on the road. Just completely different home and road. Take the Saints. Oh, sorry, take the Vikings.
I was going to say, take the Vikings. All right, I'm taking the Saints to win and cover. And this is mostly for me like a paper game. Like on paper, the Saints are a much better team than the Vikings currently are with, as you mentioned, Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, is banged up. I don't know if he's going to play in this game. Kirk Cousins is out. Alexander Madison is not a good running back, at least not a good starting running back. Justin Jefferson's out for this game. Jordan Addison's been a really good rookie. I'm impressed by that. But on paper, the Saints defense, I think, is good enough to be one of the top tier ones in the league, maybe top 10-ish type of defense. I believe they're right around 10 right now. And I do think that sometimes, if you have tape with the team one game, I think Josh Dobbs maybe gets figured out a little bit more. I mean, he's a very good quarterback. The story is awesome. At the end of the day, no one believed in him enough to keep him on the roster, whether it's the Browns or Cardinals or whatever, since he's a journeyman. Happy for him. Big story. I'm going Saints to win and cover on the road.
Okay.
Next one up, we got the Houston Texans at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are favored by 7 points.
And the Bengals are at home?
They're at home.
Ooh, 7 points. Bengals to win and Texans to cover, I think.
All right. I will say Bengals to win and cover, but if you are a gambling person out there following us, tease that spread down to 6.5. The Bengals could very easily win by a touchdown. It'll frustrate you to no end if the Bengals win by 7 and then you get a push. So I think the Bengals are coming on strong. C.J. Stroud's having a great year, but he's still a little inconsistent, as most rookies are. I think the Bengals defense is really coming along strong too. So I think
how often do you give out teasers on this show? By the way, I'm shocked by that.
Well, Cecil when
I've
he's
never
here,
heard you talk about it in person. Is all.
Cecil will tell everyone to tease every game on this podcast, and usually it's good to do. So I just try to keep the
Okay.
tradition since he's not here.
Okay.
But yeah, Bengals win and cover for me. You have the Bengals winning, but the Texans with the points. Move on to the game we mentioned a little bit earlier: the Browns at the Ravens. The battle of the two cities who hate each other because one stole the other team from the other. The Ravens
Mm-hmm.
are favored by 6 points at home.
The Ravens are favored by 6 at home. I will. I will take the Ravens to win and the Browns to cover. I think this is going to be a nasty defensive slugfest. Run the ball, 3 combined fumbles. I like the Ravens to win, but I think the Browns can cover that 6.
I'm going Ravens to win and cover. Showed different different offense.
We pick something different every.
It's great. Usually me and Cecil agree. I don't know if that's a good thing or a
Yeah.
bad thing, but I think until we see more good offense, like one of the touchdown passes last week for the Browns hit off someone's face mask and went right into Amari Cooper's hands. Like this stuff won't happen every day. So the defense is very good, but this is a whole different thing going up against Lamar Jackson. I'm going Ravens to win and cover. I think that they've
Okay.
opened up things with their weapons, and if they can run the ball a little bit, which I think they could do a little bit, that'll open things up for Lamar Jackson as well. So Ravens to win and cover.
Okay.
Next one, we have the Titans at the Buccaneers. Buccaneers favored by 1.5.
Uh, I will take the Buccaneers to win and cover. I think Will Levis's four touchdown game was a little fugazi. They're clearly just still not using Derrick Henry. And I just told you how I feel about Baker Mayfield. I don't think Chris Godwin's gotten into the action very much in these past 2 games. And then Baker Mayfield finds Mike Evans like Tom Brady never did. And I think against this Titans secondary that lost, Kevin Byard in a trade, I, I'm just and in the warmer weather, I think Baker Mayfield's going to be. I think he's going to be slinging it around a lot, and the Titans would rather run and protect their young quarterback. So I'll go Buccaneers to win and cover.
There we go. We'll agree on that one. Buccaneers to win and cover. Do you think that the Buccaneers have had some close games? Maybe they could have won if things go their way. You mentioned Mike Evans is having a great season. At this point, he's quarterback proof. First 10 seasons of his career, he's had like 1,000 yards almost, and very consistent. I'm a little concerned that when Tannehill's ready to go, they're going to put him back in the lineup because Variable has not been very complimentary of Will Levis, who, for where he was drafted and being a rookie, he's played well. I mean, I don't know if we'll keep that up, but that, and they've also used Ty J. Spears more than Derrick Henry in some situations, and that bothers me. So that's a little bit Arthur Smith-esque, and I'm going to go Buccaneers, purely out of spite there.
Okay.
San Francisco at the Jacksonville Jaguars. San Francisco is favored by 3 on the road.
I'll take the Jaguars. I think the 49ers. There's a very real chance they drop 4 in a row.
All right, I'm going to go 49ers to win and cover on the road. For me, this is more about their issues, I think, stem with these injuries, and that does concern me down the stretch. But they just coming off a bye, give Kyle Shanahan more than a week to prepare for this game. Have some guys maybe get back from injury. We're recording this Tuesday morning. We don't know the injury reports. We're doing this way early,
Yeah.
but I would imagine some of their guys are healthier after a week and a half off. I'm going to go 49ers to win and cover on the road.
I know Calvin Ridley hasn't been playing extremely well, but I think Trevor Lawrence really kind of might have his eye on the number 1 overall seed. They're not going to look past this team. Also, bet your mortgage on Christian McCaffrey scoring a touchdown. This will be the record. I believe he has tied the record. This will be the record for consecutive touchdowns in a game. Put the house on it.
The one time someone said bet the house on something in this podcast, the bet did not hit. That was Cecil.
I'm not Cecil.
Okay, well, how guilty are you going to feel if someone bet the mortgage on it and then he doesn't get a touchdown? I don't know.
I'll tell you what. I gotta tilt my camera a little bit because I need to get my my charger. My computer's about to die.
All
That's
right,
on me, everybody. My
you
first podcast. Sorry,
you
everyone.
you run it. You run ahead, buddy. I will set up the next game while you do that. We have the Detroit Lions at the Los Angeles Chargers. This will start the 4 p.m. Eastern slate, and on the Lions being favored on the road does scare me because it is still the Detroit Lions at 1.5 points. But I'll take the Lions to win and cover. The Chargers are a team that obviously this past week against the Jets they did a lot of checkdowns. Their defense still isn't quite where you'd want it to be overall. But I'll take the Lions because I think they can run the ball now with David Montgomery possibly coming back and Jahmyr Gibbs. Jared Goff is great when he's protected, and while the Chargers do have good pass rushers, that offensive line is good too. So I will take the Lions to win and cover. Ben is back at his computer now.
I'm back. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, there you go. Lions favored by 1.5 on the road against the Chargers.
I will take the Chargers. I think they've been. I think they've been a little bit hotter. I think the Lions are definitely a different team on the road. Jared Goff is a different quarterback on the road. I'm sure you just said all of these things. I'm so sorry. But they're leaning towards getting David Montgomery back, and they're using Jahmyr Gibbs more, and that's really encouraging and everything. But but the Chargers have been coming on. Like, I don't know, holding the Jets to 6 points isn't like a huge deal, but I have less belief in the Lions and Jared Goff on the road, all told. So I'll take the Chargers.
All right, disagreeing on another one. That's what we love to do here.
Yep.
Next 4 o'clock Eastern game, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Arizona Cardinals. The Falcons are favored by 1.5.
Line seems a bit low, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll take the Falcons to win and cover. We just got done talking about how Arthur Smith doesn't use his players correctly, but this Cardinals team just got 27 put on them by the Browns, who we've kept talking about have a dysfunctional offense at best. I'll take the Falcons to win and cover, right?
I'm going to do a contingency pick here. If Kyler Murray plays, which they said he's likely going to, I'm going Cardinals to win this game. I think with Josh Dobbs, they showed they were a feisty team and can beat, at least stick with some of the worst teams. And they did beat the Cowboys. Kyler Murray, I mean, I think we forget. I think there's a lot of jokes about him with the video game stuff, but he was at one point like in the running for the MVP too. Don't know how healthy he'll be if he plays, but it has been a long time since he tore the ACL. This one might be purely out of spite, just because of the Falcons not using their guys. But I'll take the Cardinals at home. I think they're due for another win. They're a team that's played really tough, and I don't think their quarterback last week, Clayton Tune, set them up for success against such a good defense. Imagine that 5th-round rookie, and you're thrust into the game against Myles Garrett as your first start. That's great. So I'll go Cardinals. I'll go Cardinals with the points and Cardinals.
That's strange. I weirdly have less faith in them with Kyler Murray. I think he's already a guy who clearly needs to knock the rust off in the games that he's playing consecutively. I have no faith in him winning that game at all. Actually, I know that sounds really mean, but like I'm knocking it around, and I don't see a world in which he plays extremely well in that game. I really don't.
Well, either way, another time to mention, bet the under on this game, because if Kyler Murray's rusty and he's playing, or Clayton Tune's playing, there's not going to be a lot of points scored. So either way. Next one up, we have the Washington Commanders at the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are favored by 6.5 points.
Yeah, Seahawks to win and cover. Like you were just talking about, you gotta throw the tape away from that last game. Pete Carroll's good enough. These receivers are good enough. That running game is good enough, and that defense is really great with Leonard Williams now. I think they come out and hit the Commanders in the mouth. Not for anything the Commanders did, but for what the Ravens did to them.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I think they're a much more talented team. Looking forward to Leonard Williams getting more and more playing time as time goes on this season with the Seahawks. And Commanders are a good team. They're a feisty team, but going on the road is a little bit different. And they've traded away some guys. I think the first week maybe you can get by, but the more and more time goes on, when you trade players away, the attrition's going to happen, and you're going to start losing some more guys. So Seahawks will win and cover.
Yep.
All right, the last of the 4 p.m. Eastern Times, 4:25 Eastern Time games. We have Dallas hosting the Giants. The Cowboys are favored by 16.5 points.
16 and a half.
This is what, so Ben, this is one where if Tyrod Taylor's playing or even Daniel Jones, I'm taking the points. This is a ridiculous line, but it looks like Tommy DeVito's in line to start another game. So, I mean, for me personally, I'm going Cowboys winning cover just because of that alone.
I'll take the Giants plus 16 and a half. The line is so absurd.
Yep.
I don't.
Are you taking the Giants outright?
They have beaten up on bad quarterbacks, though. I just think the line is too crazy. I think two touchdowns plus. Last time they were favored this big, I think they were favored 12 and a half against the Cardinals, and they lost the game.
Yeah.
Outright. I just don't see a world in which, I don't know. No, all right. I'm taking the Giants plus the points. I mean, the Cowboys are going to win clearly, but that's too many. I know the Giants look awful. Almost 17 points though. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't have a reasoning other than it's crazy. It's a crazy line.
I mean, you're probably most of the time right, and if it was like, even if they had anyone like Colt McCoy at quarterback, I'm going 16 and a half, but it's Tommy DeVito, and he's been banged up. He's been not had the most confidence flowing through him after the first couple times he's gotten action. I'll take the Cowboys. I think this is one of these games where they win by 40 and everyone gets hyped up again, and then when they play the Eagles or 49ers, they just rip your heart out. I've seen this movie too many times.
Okay, so I have more faith in the Italian Stallion than you do. All right, sounds good.
Definitely. All right, Sunday Night Football, another one that isn't a marquee matchup. We've had a lot more of these this year, and I think a lot of it stems from the Jets, because the Jets travel to the Raiders to take on Antonio Pierce as the new head coach. Jets are favored by 1.5 on the road.
God, that's really the Sunday Night Football game?
Yep.
I think I knew that, but that's awful. Yeah, I'll take the Jets. No, I'll take the Jets in this game. I think there's a come down after the emotional sort of what they win by 24 point win against the Giants. I think Devontae Adams scores in this game because they wanted to feed him more. So if you're a prop better, I would bet him to score. But I think the Jets and Zach Wilson sort of figure it out a little more offensively against a Raiders defense that is being, their stats are better than they are, if that makes sense. Like, well, no, your stats mean you are what you are. No, not always. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I think the Raiders defense isn't quite as good as you would be led to believe by their overall like numbers. So I'll take the Jets. That's a rough pick, but yeah, that's my pick.
I'm gonna go Raiders with the points and against the spread. I don't know. They're at home. I do like the energy they got from Antonio Pierce being there. I do like the strategy of, hey, we have good players. Let's use them. I'll try to reward that. The defense for the Jets does scare me a little bit. But you just don't know week in and week out how many points their offense can put up. If they were going to put up a lot of points, this is the defense to do it against. But I'll take the Raiders. Mm-hmm. All right, okay. Monday Night Football, another barn burner for some primetime games. They really need to get better at this scheduling thing. We have the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills are favored by 7.5.
7.5 seems right. I'll take the Bills. I'll take in the points. I think really truly they've been like lambasted so far this week in sports media and just like around the NFL sphere for losing to the Bengals, which should not happen. Like, I know the Bengals were 4-3 when that game started, but like they're better than that record. You know what I mean? And the Bengals have their number. I don't like I said, it's not quite time to panic, and they can beat the Broncos, and they can beat it by 10 or more. I don't really see a reason to pick the Broncos in this spot, other than since they've given up 70 points, the defense has been better. It hasn't been good, but it has been better.
Yeah, I think this is the typical get right game for a team that has talent but has kind of like fallen on a little bit of hard times here with the Bills. Coming back home to play a primetime game, even if it is against a lackluster opponent, you're going to have Bills fans crazy tailgating all Monday next week. I think that's really, really good. Have an extra day of rest for some of these injured guys. I know they're not going to get some of these guys back, but that means a whole heck of a lot. This is a team where if you don't throw it to PS2 on a corner, you can maybe avoid throwing it to someone who can pick it off or make a play on the ball. Then that's huge. Maybe they move Diggs around, or maybe some of the other guys step up. Maybe Gabe Davis has his one good game out of every 4 or 5, and that'll be good for him. But yeah, I think this is just a get right game. They'll win by I think maybe like 10 or 14 points.
PS2, I hadn't heard him called that. That's really fun.
Well,
Dude, do you think he was alive to like play PS2?
I think the Broncos have done some videos with him playing PS2, and I think it was like I don't think
Like, is he aware of it though? Like,
he's got to be
or
because
like, or would like he?
he probably grew up with the PS3, but he probably had to know the PS2. With his age being like what 24, 25.
God,
Yeah, we're old.
it's crazy. I just keep getting older. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
that's how it goes. All right, so any final thoughts for the week, Ben?
Uh, no. I've exhausted all of them. I think this is truly, honestly, maybe one of the worst weeks of NFL football that we have ever seen, and like that's not a joke. Like, go through those games that we just talked about, and like 3 to 4 are exciting and worth watching. I'm including like the Packers Steelers game in that. Like, it'll be ugly, like it'll be disgusting, and that might be a little fun, but like I just there's I mean it starts with Thursday Night Football as Bears at Panthers. Again, it might be so bad it'll be entertaining, but yeah, dude, ladies, gentlemen, if this is the weekend, like this might be the weekend to be like, oh yeah, I'll go to that concert with you. Like, buy some Goodwill. You know what I mean? Like, buy the farmers market Goodwill. Like, take someone out on a date and just keep an eye on it through over their shoulder. This weekend's gonna suck.
Well, you took my line. I usually tell people on the show, yeah, don't watch this Monday night game. Go spend time with your significant other, and I'll update you in the next podcast because that's what we do. But it's not looking great with primetime games specifically. So if you have to do something primetime, that's going to be something you can do. Also, doesn't help that 3 of the best teams in the league, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, and the Eagles, are on bye the same week. Again, NFL schedule makers, you want my help? I'll be here. Ben and I both can be bought for a price. We can make the schedule. Yeah. We won't rig it in any of our teams' favor.
Mine will be lower than you think it might be.
There you go. My final thought is just remember to remind everyone to like and subscribe on YouTube to the TGH channel, the Game House channel, and also to wherever you get your podcast from. Give us a 5-star rating. Ben's around the Game House as well, so it helps him out too. And we'll have him sure on at some point to fill in for Cecil at some other point. Or for me too. We can figure that out at some point if I ever need a break. But it's going to be a fun time. If you guys also like and subscribe, it helps us out as we go forward with this thing and can keep on doing it for everyone. So we really appreciate it. We thank Ben for filling in for Cecil. Again,
yeah, how'd I do?
You did great.
Yeah, give me a grade. Give me a grade.
B+. There's always room for improvement.
All right, that's fine. I'll take it.
Yeah. Again, some things are bigger than
the third and the Ben.
The third and the
Ben.
Ben.
Wait, no, he's the third.
The Ben and the Don. There you go. Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. It's not like we speak every single day of our lives, so so this was nice. It was nice to sit down and chat for once.
Oh, absolutely. So thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you guys next week.